expectations, but very big hope. So is this the way forward? That's what I want to know.
And love localism and what we can do, particularly in Wellington, because it's a city made up of wonderful little communities.
Wellbeing Protocol event, what did you think?
I think it's great. It's exactly the kind of thing that I've been looking for. Well, I think it really is going to take microfinance to the next level.
Yeah, so my name's Fiona Purchase. I am a resident here in Wellington, and yeah, I've worked in the charity sector pretty much all my life.
You've just been to Scaling Localism, Wellbeing Protocol event. What do you think of the Wellbeing Protocol?
I think it could be really groundbreaking. I think it is challenging in terms of shifting us as a sector from the way we've been working to something new, but there's huge potential.
Well, I can say that I came here tonight wearing my hat as a board member for the Sustainability Trust, and my name is Emily Fetcher, and just being very interested in making an impact in our local communities. It was lovely to hear her talking about what an impact it's making in her work, because it's actually making it easier for her to show the impacts of the community work that she's doing, which is creating efficiency in the system.
So my name's Oliver Bruce. I'm an angel investor and community builder based in Wellington. Things like the Wellbeing Protocol I think are actually extremely important for being able to effectively, we've got the technology in our pockets to have smartphones, so like how do we build and coordinate ourselves in a far more efficient and transparent way? And I think like what they're building and what they've got with their social proofs is already really important. I'm very excited about what the next steps of that might start to look like.
So it is my pleasure to hand over to Mark Pascal from the Wellbeing Protocol, who's going to take us through everything else.
Thank you, Frida. All right.
Kia ora, my name is Rangi Luke. I'm from Te Atiawa, and I'm a member and a founder of Tāne Haura. Tāne Haura Kaupapa is built around Māori men here at Waifatu to enhance their health and well-being and making sure that their mokopuna and that can be part of their life and that as well. Getting out of bed, meeting up with each other, encouraging each other. It's just a means group that supports each other. Biggest challenge is trying to access funding for the group. We found to struggle a little bit just to complete the applications and things like that and write into the script of what people want to hear. We are disconnected from the funding at the moment because it's built around a lot of people at higher places that actually don't know where the money is going to in the communities. It's about our tikanga, about our culture, about te whare tapawha, a holistic view of our well-being. A new funding model would help us reach our goals and aspirations. I want our community and that to live longer, making sure that our men that sit on the pie and speak for our people are there for a lot more longer than what they are at the moment.
So this is a picture of the Tāne Ora guys a couple of years ago with myself, Benjamin, and a couple of the other people on the project team. I think Michelle's here as well today. This picture is quite poignant. Gideon, second in from the left, is not around anymore. And this is really a symptom of some of the shocking statistics that are around Māori men's health in New Zealand. I think it's about 7.5 years they live less than non-Māori men. So my name's Mark Pascal. I'll be talking to you for this this afternoon, and we've got a lot on. But we'll probably try and take questions at the end. We've got some time for the Q&A at the end. A bit about me. I hate doing this, but people tell me I have to build some credibility. So I'm a technologist by trade. I've been running software companies all my career. So about 9 years ago, I got heavily involved in the world of blockchain and Web3, which I'll touch on a bit later. But that path led me to do some pretty interesting stuff around New Zealand and around the world. I've ran the first big blockchain conference in Auckland. I presented at 2 parliamentary select committees. I set up the first decentralized autonomous organization controlling $165 million worth of, I was one of the co-founders of that, Metacartel Ventures a few years ago, ran the first university course on DAOs and was executive director of the Blockchain Association. But probably the most defining moment of my career was this picture was, you may recognize the younger version of Chris Bishop on the right there. So I ran a conference and managed to persuade Chris, managed to persuade my lead speaker, Vitalik Buterin, to come down to Parliament. I was actually trying to get him to meet the Prime Minister, whoever it was at the time, but all I got was Chris Bishop. So Vitalik was at that point 21 years old, and he just created this new blockchain called Ethereum, which has now got a market cap of $0.3 trillion US. So anyway, I got them to meet. They had nothing in common, but it was a good photograph. So about 4 years ago, I found myself in the fortunate position of being able to let go of a lot of the other stuff I was doing and try and do something of some social good, try and bring the knowledge that I had to do some social good. I got onto the Government Accelerator Programme. I teamed up with a guy called Benjamin Alder, who is here. Put your hand up with Benjamin. And we sort of really got sucked into this world, and have spent the last few years trying to really make this fly. And so the Wellbeing Protocol was born about 4 years ago. Initially, we ran some experiments in Cannons Creek around a local currency. We partnered with a local charity, Wesley and Nati Tur, and got lots of press, got on TV, might have got into a bit of trouble with Reserve Bank, FMA, NSD. We came across the system that is designed to sort of protect its integrity and not good with people who try to innovate in that system. So we had lots of learnings and that trials, but it really set us up for a more ambitious goal to create a well-being economy. And so where we're at now, I describe ourselves as an impact-focused social enterprise. We're a combination of a traditional company and a charity on the Gift Collective. We've got a small team, but with a wider group of contributors, both in New Zealand and now across the world. And we've got here with the help of a lot of other people. And a big shout out to our advisory group, Helmut Modlik, Lani Evans, Lana Irving, Alex Hannand, who've guided us along the way. Our goal is to open source everything. There's no profit motivation, and where we want to get to is this concept of a steward ownership. So steward ownership is a really interesting concept, and it's an alternative business model that locks mission over profit by enshrining two key principles: self-determination and purpose orientation. So that's where we want to get to. Right, so scaling localism, that's the title of this presentation. That's why you're here. Smarter way to fund social good. So why would we want to scale localism? What's wrong with the way we fund social good? And to answer that question, you kind of need to zoom out a little bit, because things actually aren't going so well at the moment. And more importantly, things are getting worse. And the way I see it, we've got two kind of meta symptoms of what's going wrong. One is the gap between the rich and the poor is increasing, and the organisations that we've set up to support the marginalised, the disadvantaged, are struggling to cope, and that's getting worse. And it's getting worse everywhere. It's not just in New Zealand, it's not just which government we elect, it's kind of getting worse all over the world. The other kind of meta problem, for those of us on the right side of privilege, we're actually designing a world that isn't good for our physical or mental health. Despite huge advances in medical technology, despite the fact we're living longer, the research is actually showing that our physical and mental health is deteriorating. Obesity, loneliness, and now epidemics. That's incredible. And if you want to go deeper into that sort of world, this is a great book that we read earlier on. Johan sort of really describes this in a very scientific way. But we can't keep blaming the people in charge, the politicians, the CEOs, the governments, because they come and go, but the problem persists. And it's happening all over the world. So this really implies that there's something deeper going on. And we believe it's this system. It's the air we breathe, it's capitalism. And capitalism is a system, by definition, centered around individual wealth accumulation, competition, and private ownership. That's not particularly controversial. That's just what it is. And it's done amazing things for humanity. We don't doubt that. But one of the key features of capitalism is that it's constantly striving for efficiency. And one of the ways it becomes more efficient is what we call economy of scale centralization. So it's more efficient to have one big company than 3 small companies. So we tend to get bigger and bigger companies. And technology has taken that centralization to a level never experienced in human history. But the major side effect of that centralization is that our communities are disappearing, they're atrophying. And this is described really well in this seminal book by Raghuram Rajan. So Raghuram was the ex-head of the Indian Reserve Bank, ex-chief economist at the IMF. And the way he describes it is that society is supported by 3 pillars. We've got the free market capitalism pillar, we've got the state government pillar, and then we've got the community pillar. And a few hundred years ago, they were in reasonable alignment. And then we had the various revolutions, agricultural, industrial, tech revolution, and they massively shifted the power towards the free market company, towards the state, at the expense of community. And Raghuram argues that many of today's systemic problems are a direct result of that shift in power, from the environmental breakdown to loneliness to inequality. And as a result, we're becoming much more reliant on bigger entities, bigger organisations, bigger government, bigger philanthropy. And it's taken over the role that community used to fill. And we build up this ecosystem of organisations to try and address these systemic problems. And broadly, these organisations can be grouped into 2 types. Funders, and this is just a smattering of some of the Wellington funders, people who give out money. Generally, it comes out of our tax system or philanthropy. And then we've got what we call community support organisations or partners. And again, this is just a handful of some of the amazing organisations in Wellington who are doing that. And these organisations typically sit between the funder and the community, and that they're very connected with what's going on locally. So what I'd like to do is just to introduce a couple of people who are in that world, Lynn and Michelle, just to spend a couple of minutes talking about what they do and how they fit into that ecosystem. So I might get Lynn to introduce yourself. Thanks.
I might attempt to be without a microphone. Can you hear me in the back? Yeah. Okay, let me know if you can't hear me. Ko Lynn Arabogust Hoku Ingoa. I come from, just briefly to introduce myself because I've got to build credibility, because Mark said that. I was born and bred in Te Awa Kairangi in Te Atiawa land, and have lived now in Wellington pretty much most of my life. My descendants hail from England, and 5th generation New Zealander, but obviously from England way back when. So for my sins now, I work at Wellington Community Fund, which was one of the funders that Mark put up on the board there. I've been there for about 5 years. So we're a community trust, so there are 12 community trusts around the country. And we were established from the sale of the banks, so the money that we hold that we can invest in and grant with is from the sale of the banks, the trust banks back in the 80s. So the money is sort of independent of government, but we do have boards that are appointed by the minister. So you get a flavour on our boards of the government of the day, but that's kind of where it stops. So that gives you a little bit of context. I'm the CE at Wellington Community Fund. We're a really little funder. We fund as far up north as Otaki, Porirua, Te Awa Kairangi and Lower Hutt, and sort of Wellington, into Upper Hutt, the foothills of the Remutaka ranges. So the brief, I think, from Mark was to talk a little bit about the experience of being a funder in the current environment. And I think the first thing I'd have to say is I can't speak for all funders because we're all actually really different. And that little slide that you put up there with a few different examples, government funders versus a funder like Clear versus a funder like Wellington Community Trust, and there's a few funders in the room. Everyone's a bit different, but I'll speak from my experience. So Wellington Community Fund is about funding social services. So we only fund those who need it the most. That's kind of our thing. That's the lane we're in, and other funders are in other lanes, and that's awesome. You kind of need everyone in all sorts of lanes. So we're about funding salaries and keeping the lights on and leases and that sort of boring stuff, but that it makes the services go. What we've seen, or what I've seen in the last 5 years, is no surprises here, a huge increase in need in the community organisations that we typically would fund. So requesting more money because they're serving more people. We've seen a real increase in what we're kind of describing, and it's sort of a negative term, but I'm just going to say it sort of as the working poor. There's certainly a rise in need amongst people who are working full time, just struggling to get food on the table. So we've seen a massive increase in basic immediate community needs like food, shelter and safety. And we give away about $2 million a year, which is the maximum we try to give away from our returns on our investment. We run a really lean shop at Wellington Community Fund, so we have a small team. We don't have flash offices like KPMG. We do our very, very best to keep our costs really lean so we can grant as much as we can to community, and it still only ends up being about $2 million a year. So we're always what we call oversubscribed. And other funders in the room will probably experience the same thing. So we have a lot of amazing initiatives approaching us, doing incredible things in the community, many of whom we have to say, I'm really sorry, we can't fund you. So that is one of the key and core frustrations of being a funder, I think. It's very, very hard to equitably determine whose application, whose approach to you for funding is the best one to back, because there are so many that are great, right? At Wellington Community Fund, one of the few advantages of being a small funder is that we're pretty agile. We do things as low compliance as possible, so people can apply in all sorts of different ways. They don't even need to apply sometimes, they can just have a conversation with us. We keep compliance really low, but it is very, very difficult for us to determine, you know, who needs it the most, because that's what we're about, those who need it the most. Have I covered my brief there?
Yeah, very well. Right? Yeah, thank you. Awesome, thank you, Michelle.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ko tēnei taku mihi ki ngā tangata whenua o te rohi nei. Ko Ingarangi, ko Katirana, ko Kanata, oku tipuna, I tipu aki au I te awa kārangi, I raro te pai maunga poki atua. Kei te noho ahau ki Murutai, I te taha te whanganui a tara. Ko Matt Takutane, ko Dylan, rawa ko Tessa Akutamahine, ko Michelle Hayward taku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou. Kia ora everyone, I'm Michelle. Mark set me up to come and have a wee chat to you today. I was first working for an organisation in the partners space called Nuku Ora. Nuku Ora was a wellbeing organisation. Used to be called Sport Wellington, change of name because what they're about is not about sport. It's about whānau achieving their wellbeing aspirations in ways that they want to, and sport may be part of that. I now work for an organisation called Were Were Kokako. In both of those roles, my responsibility has been to help communities, help organisations find resources, whether that be putia, or whether it be people, or whether it be mātauranga, or just connections to help them be self-determining in the way that they want to achieve their outcomes, whatever they may be. I think what I found, and was really well said by Lynn, was that everyone has all sorts of different criteria and processes that they require you to understand and go through in order to be compliant with their funding requests. So most people will require you to partner fund, that's great, but the partners that you fund with will want to see different outcomes and then a different process. They might require quotes, they may not require quotes. They may want you to think 6, 12, 24 months in advance for a long-term project, or they may simply want you to do something within the month that you receive the funding. All of it makes for a really complex situation for our communities and our whānau that just need some money to keep the lights on, have a kai, go in and do the things that they enjoy in their communities for their wellbeing. Why I became involved in the Wellbeing Protocol is that there was a group of Tane, Rangi and Gideon out at Waifatu who had started their own practice of meeting on a Friday night and working on their wairua, on their hinengaro, on their tahatinana, all of those things that they didn't have time for in their day-to-day life. But they didn't have the putia to spend on that. They'd done so much they could to start with, and then they just needed some money to kind of take those next steps. Why I became involved is that the government agency needed an organisation to transfer the money through for compliance purposes. What I was really lucky to find out is that these tāne who originally thought that they wanted to join a gym, be there every week and do all of these sorts of things, that wasn't the barrier. If I had chosen to fund their gym membership, I would have missed the boat, because those tāne didn't have the clothes and the specialist shoes, the uniform required to get to the gym. So in the process of being community-led, self-determining and being able to ask and answer questions of each other, they really got to the barriers that were behind what was causing them to not be physically active, to not address their needs, to not continue on in the process. Sometimes that was the right kai, the knowledge for what kai makes your body move well. All of those things came through the simple process of voting and working through the app and deciding what projects would go up and stay up. So I was really thankful to be part of this project with Ben and to be alongside them and Mark as they learned about how tech can support these areas in a space that as partners, as communities and as funders, I think our time is shortening as we move to more relational responses to funding. So that brief.
That's great.
Nice.
So, how might we rethink an economic system in a way that addresses some of the challenges that Lynn and Michelle have talked about? That was what we started thinking about. And the first thing we started to think about is, well, we perhaps need to rethink what we mean by capital. So capitalism, we've got this vision of capital, money, and... Okay, so in the West, we are fairly focused on these two top forms of capital. But the interesting thing is, of course, most of you know that the science shows that above a certain level, our human well-being doesn't actually increase. We get our basic needs met, and after that, it doesn't really make us happier. So there's a lot of excess of this capital around for those of us who are privileged. But there's actually all these other forms of capital, social capital, relationships, networks, intellectual capital, skills, knowledge, natural capital, the living system, cultural capital, traditions, stories, spiritual capital, meaning, purpose, and experiential capital. And there's quite a famous piece that was written that came out of the permaculture world that sort of first introduced this concept many years ago. So there are all these other forms of capital that are actually good for our well-being, and these really don't really have a limit. We can just keep on building up those. But these are being eroded by this system of capitalism, which is sort of pushing us towards those top two. So what I'd like to do is to do a little exercise. So what we're going to do is to reflect, and we're going to work in our tables just for a few minutes. And one person is going to draw this grid. So we've got alternative capital at the top, and I'll put the previous slide back, and traditional capital there. And then we've got self-care, selfish stuff, and community care, that stuff. And we're just going to have a little discussion and write down some of the things that we, in your groups, how we use our capital. And I'll just give you a few examples. So, you know, self-care, traditional capital, buy some Google shares, that's one example. Community care, using traditional capital, you might buy some neighbourhood composting bins. There we're going. You might learn Te Ara Māori, and you may argue that has some sort of community aspects that might go a little bit above that way, and helping a youth membership program might be in that one. So just for a few minutes, I'd just like you to draw this grid and just have a discussion and write down some examples of how you spend your capital in today's world. So if that's the case, how might we rethink a system that actually incentivizes and pushes us out towards those other quadrants, where we can actually invest in capital that's actually good for us and not the new iPhone or the new whatever. So, there's the next slide. So, and it turns out that local community building supports the holistic growth of all 8 forms of capital. But it's such an unusual thing now in the West, we have to have a term for it, localism. A focus on local communities, economies, governance, and culture. It emphasises self-sufficiency, local decision-making, and community-driven solutions. And in our hearts, we know that working together on stuff that we care about as a group is good. We're more motivated, we're more engaged, we care more. And there's actually hard evidence to show that investing in localism can actually have huge effects on even our health system. So this is a fascinating study, a public health study that came out in 2018 in the district of Frome in southwest England. They invested in community building over a 3-year period, and they built up all these groups. They did things like social prescribing, where you go to the GP for anxiety, depression, and instead of Prozac, you get a gardening group. But what they did also is to measure hospital admissions in their county and compared it to 3 other counties over that period. And they found an astounding, I think it was a 46% drop compared to the other counties. So, and this was covered in international press, in The Guardian and the New York Times. So, you know, that the evidence is there that we invest in localism, we invest in community building, it works. So imagine if we could create this sort of parallel economic system that would support and incentivize localism. How do we begin to start that journey? That seems like a sort of crazy idea. One clue is the work done by this lady. Has anybody heard of Eleanor Ostrom? Hands, a few people want to. So Eleanor was the first woman to win the Nobel Prize for Economics quite a few years ago, and she was a big fan of localism. In fact, this is quite a famous quote she made, that there is no reason to believe the bureaucrats and politicians, no matter how well-meaning, are better at solving the problems than the people on the spot who have the strongest incentive to get the solution right. But she looked at localism from quite an interesting angle. She studied the commons. So the commons are the shared resources that everyone can use but no one owns. The forests, the rivers, the community gardens. They work best when people manage them together fairly and responsibly. And she challenged the traditional wisdom then and now that the commons gets trashed. If nobody owns it, it gets trashed. And obviously we're seeing that at a global scale. But she went all around the world, studied a lot of indigenous cultures and discovered lots of examples where the commons was being protected. And she distilled her learning into these 8 principles, the 8 principles of managing the commons. And she wrote a book and it's reasonably famous. So clear boundaries, local rules, collective decision-making, monitoring, graduated sanctions, conflict resolution, local autonomy and nested systems. I won't go into too much more detail, but she kind of created this framework for managing the commons. And this framework has been widely recognised as aligning closely with indigenous models of resource stewardship, including Maori approaches, kaitianga, and collective decision-making. So we began to think how perhaps we could think of community well-beings as a type of commons. Because if you think about it, if you're living in a community group, say in a social housing complex, we can make individual decisions. We can turn the stereo up, play our favourite, whatever song and piss off everybody else, or we can make decisions that benefit the collective. So could we design a sort of system that used this to build a well-beings commons? But we have a problem. If we're going to build a new economic system that truly gives power and autonomy to hyperlocal groups, we need to use technology and computers to really scale it, to make a difference, to sort of fight the quite oppressive technology-fueled alternative system. So if we're going to use computers, we have to build it on something. And if we build it on the current infrastructure, the computing infrastructure, this infrastructure is centralized. By definition, it's controlled by increasingly tech bros on the west coast of America. So if we built something on those systems, they could influence, shut down, corrupt. So we can't build it on those systems. We have to build it on a different system. Unfortunately, we do have this alternative system. And as I mentioned before, this is the world I've spent many years immersed in, the world of Web 3. So we're kind of in the Web 1 was just reading stuff on the internet, the first web browsers. Web 2 is the world we live in now, interactive websites that you can do stuff, Netflix, Uber, all that stuff. And Web 3 is this fundamentally new paradigm, new technology paradigm, which is decentralized. And I'm not going to go into a Web3 presentation, much as I'd love to. I'll get into trouble. But I'm going to just a couple of slides. So this is the Web 2 world, and this is centralized. This is Uber, this is Facebook, this is somebody who's got the keys in the middle. So they actually control your money, your identity, everything. Web 3 is decentralized. There is no central control point. So in theory, it can't be corrupt, it can't be shut down, it can't be influenced. And the second generation blockchains, like Ethereum, which is what my friend Vitalik created at the age of 19, they have this concept of a smart contract. So a smart contract is like a digital vending machine. It automatically does what is agreed when the right conditions are met, without the need for intermediaries. So you can actually program stuff. You can make systems using the smart contract code. And following on from that, if you've got this mechanism to write rules, you can actually go a step further. You can create governance systems, you can create voting technology that actually look more like an organizational structure. But it's different from the sort of the black box hierarchical organizational structures that we're used to, in that you can make it hyper decentralized and community controlled, and it can't be corrupted by anybody. So that's what blockchain and DAOs does as an infrastructure. Okay, so let's move away from the sort of the more abstract and let's move to the more practical. So how might we start to address some of the pain points that Lynn and Michelle talked about, and take a first step towards building a well-being economy? So first, let's look at the stakeholders. So we've got the community on the right. So this is the hyperlocal group who care about something. So we've heard about Tainora, the Māori Men's Health Group, but it could be many other groups. It could be 20 people in Mount Vic creating a community garden. It could be 100 tenants in a social housing complex, 150 parents in a school who are worried about child mental health. Any hyperlocal group who care about something. 50 refugees in South London. Then we've got the funder, people whose job it is to give out money. And we've heard from Lynn as an example of that. Then we've got this partner, this organisation that sits in the middle, and they kind of provide two roles. They're supporting the community, that they're local, they're experts in community development, but they're also providing a proof of good to the funder, because typically the funder doesn't want to or has the time to get into the weeds of this stuff. So imagine if we could look at Ostrom's principles, pick on those two, collective decision making and local autonomy. They're quite critical. So a couple of years ago, we set about trying to solve that problem. How do we create an infrastructure that can actually give that collective decision-making power to the hyperlocal group? So imagine if you could give this small group their own pot of money, their own micro-treasury. But of course, it's not that simple, because you drop a briefcase of money into a town hall, it's probably not going to go well. So you need to put some things in place. First thing you need is a kind of we call it a constitution, but it's a kind of a promise of good. If you get money, this is what we will spend it on. And it's written by the community, it's community generated, but they're kind of incentivized to write it in a way that is attractive to funders, because they want to get funding into their treasury. The next bit, and the bit that we really focused on, is this mechanism for democratically allocating money. And this is actually harder than you'd think, because generally the way we allocate money is government. We have this sort of deeply hierarchical democratic system, or there's capitalism, a company, which is more like a sort of fascist dictatorship with people deciding at the top. So actually creating a democratic system is what we focused on. And we experimented with some key innovations. One was fund streaming. If you think about this whole concept of time gating funds, it doesn't make sense. It's not how the world works. It's not how nature works. So streaming money into the treasury and streaming micro grants out the other end. And we also explored some interesting voting technology, quadratic voting, conviction voting, delegated voting. And so what we're going to do now is to actually have a play, if the internet gods are going to play ball. So what we're going to do now, and this is a very dangerous thing to do in a live situation, but we're actually going to have a go at the app. So these are the instructions to use the app. Go to your app stores. You don't all need to do this, but as a table, kind of work together to, at least a few of you can get onto the app, and then we will have a play with it. So pretty much go to the app stores on your phone, search for Hum Community, that's the name of the app. Install, sign in, there's a one-time sign-up process, and we ask you some questions to validate who you are. and request to join the Raukawa Changemaker community. So this is a test community we've set up. This is the community that Frida, the fictitious community that Frida described. So we can try and get a few people onto that. Okay, so what you can start to do now is put an idea in. You are this community. In the Ideas tab, so in the bottom here we've got a number of bits of the app. So I'm clicking on the first tab here, which you should default to. So this is a place for you to throw in your ideas. And the idea is you have these regular meetings supported by the charity, supported by your stewards. And we have this concept of community stewards within each community. So these are people who have extra responsibility. They're trusted members of the community who can support the others. And that's a key point I always make, is that technology, when you're working with the most marginalised, the most disadvantaged communities, technology is just one part of the solution. There needs to be that human side. Okay, be quiet for 1 minute and I'll just explain, then you can carry on talking. So, the way it works is the first screen is the ideation phase. So we're throwing in one-line ideas. You can include a picture. You can include, if you don't want to type, you can talk. The ideas go into this thing, and then we have this thing called quadratic voting, which sounds very complicated, and you perhaps already worked it out. But essentially, what it allows you to do is, if I like something, I can give it one vote, which costs me 10 credits. I've got 100 credits at the top. I give it another vote, something else that costs me 10 credits. But if I'm really passionate about an idea, if I want to give it 2 votes, that costs me 40 credits, and 3 votes cost me 90 credits. So it's really expensive to be passionate about an idea. So quadratic voting is a mechanism that lets people express how strongly they feel about options when there's multiple things to consider. So that's one of the innovations, and you can click into any of these ideas. You can see the detail of the idea. You can see how people voted in there. And so that's the first step of the process, is to actually capture the ideas from the community and see what flows up to the top. Now I'm going to take my votes off that one. And so at the moment we've got local veggie garden is looking pretty good. Who submitted that? Oh, Finn. Well done, Finn. You're the winner. So what happens next is that we need to take that idea and morph it through into proposal, because it just could be a one-line idea. We now know that the community likes that idea. So the stewards, working with the community and support with the charity, will then take that idea, and so at the moment, myself and Tim are stewards in this community. So we're going to approve it, and we're going to take that idea. And once we do that, it moves that out of this list, and so you'll get your voting credits back to vote on something else, and it now moves into this next tab on the app down here. So it's now in review. So now what happens is the stewards will sit down with the community members and flesh that idea out. And we're going to create a draft proposal. So we're going to pull the information across, and we're going to prompt for some extra information. So we want time frame, next week, whatever, cost, and again, we can set a minimum and maximum amount. Again, this is a micro-granting platform. We can set whatever sort of limits that everybody's comfortable with. So let's say it's going to be $100. And then who's going to own that thing? Who's going to actually do it? I'm going to put me on this one so I can show you the reporting stuff in a minute. There we go. I'm going to make me owner. And so this checkbox here is important. So this is me as a steward saying I'm confident this proposal is in line with the intent set out in the Constitution. This is the Constitution that you'll have all read and signed up to so that, and I'm going to publish for approval. So, and I've set so we have a multi-sig system where key decisions need typically more than one steward to agree. I've set that at a low threshold for now, so that should go straight through to a proposal. There we go. So, was it local veggie garden? Was it local veggie garden? Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, cool. So that's now a live proposal. So you can see that on your screens. So we now go into a second round of voting, and this is where we introduce some new concepts. So the blue bar is the real-time number of votes that people have put on against that thing. So, and again, this is a streaming system. There's a constant flow of ideas that are flowing through proposals. So one thing you'll notice the threshold is the black vertical line. So that's the number of votes that this proposal needs to pass. And what we do is we do some maths and we look at the amount of money in the fund and compare it to how much the cost of the thing is. So a lower cost thing will require less votes less votes. So for the $200 one, it requires a lot, where the $600, that's going to use up most of the funds, so we need many more people to agree. So that's one innovation. We've also got this thing called conviction voting, which is a time dampening effect. So when I put my 3 votes on, as I've done now, the blue bar doesn't move immediately. It gradually builds up. And we typically set that to a number of days so that it gradually builds up. And that actually overcomes some key problems. Well, one, it actually incentivizes people who don't change their mind all the time. So it incentivizes people who hold their voting conviction. And it also overcomes last minute voter swing issues and voter coercion issues, this time dampening effect. What it also does is this combination of conviction voting and quadratic voting, it does something really interesting. It actually helps to protect minority groups. You can imagine a community of say 30 people, and you've got a subset, you've got 3 or 4 people in that community who think a bit differently. It might be an ethnic group or whatever. If they're more likely to put their 3 votes on their proposal, and they're more likely to hold it on for a long time because they feel quite passionate about that thing. So actually that small group, if they 3 of them, they've got 9 votes and they hold it on, it's more likely to have an effect, and they're more likely to get their minority proposal across the line. So what I want everybody to do is to vote for the local veggie garden, and let's see if we can pass it. And what we've done is to speed up the conviction voting, so it refreshes every minute. It normally be days. So we can all put some votes on the local veggie garden, and we can see if we can pass that, and then I can show you the next bit. So while we're voting, this is a continuous system. So we recommend the stewards keep between 3 and 5 proposals in this list at any one time. And so we keep it flowing. So when one passes, it will, oh, there we go, it's about to pass. As it passes, it will drop off this list, and then the stewards can probably stick another one in. So we don't want to overload people with options, but when it passes, yeah, we want to keep things flowing. Okay, come on, we can do it. It refreshes every minute. There we go. Right, so we've now passed. So it's passed, and you'll now see it's turned up as a project on the last tab. So you click on the project. It's now an authorized project. Now I'm the owner. I wouldn't normally be the owner, so I'm gonna accept that project. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm still happy to do it because this may have been weeks before since I proposed it. I'm still okay doing it. Okay. Congratulations. I then get the money. And I'll talk about how the money comes in a minute. So I get paid the money, I do the thing. I'm the community member, I do the thing. When I've done the thing, I then submit a report, the actual cost, say it was a bit less, I put that in. I can add a picture of receipt, I can then add evidence of the project. Let's take a video to prove that I did it. The thing I did, yeah, wait, that's cool. Okay, use the video. And I'm going to submit my report. Okay, simple as that. Okay, no big reporting issue. So yes, so what you're seeing is one mechanism to make decisions around a pot of money, and this is really just the start of a journey for us. We want to make all these alternative mechanisms just to make it super easy to do stuff at a hyper-local level. So for the last 18 months, we've been trialling this approach. So we ran our first trial a couple of years ago. We worked with Michelle and Sport New Zealand with Tana Ora. And since then, we've discovered this quite big international community of participatory grant makers. It's far more evolved in London and the US. But just to give you some idea of some of the diversity of projects that we've been trialing. So Tana Ora was Māori Men's Health. So TSIP in London. So they've run 3 trials: social housing community, Latino community in Southwark, the business community in London. Mahua 2040, that was an environmental group funded by Tasman District Council. Village Zero, that's Melbourne, Regen Melbourne, I'll talk about them in a second. Rangatahi, Youth Urban Kai with Common Unity in Lower Hutt, and Taita College. We've also done a bunch of conferences where they've actually used the technology to make decisions in real time. So conference people, there's a fund and people vote, and by the end of the conference, a whole lot of money goes out. That's what happened at the IOC event last week, where they dished out quite a lot of money. So we've done a bunch of trials. So what have we learned? I think this is quite an interesting report just out a couple of weeks ago. So one of our key partners in Melbourne, Regen Melbourne, they actually wrote a report of their trials. So if anybody's interested, we can flick you that link. But there were some great quotes in that report. Super easy to use, definitely fit for purpose. Great to be part of a pilot, interesting how it relates to community giving and flips the model. So some great quotes from real people using it in Melbourne. But some of the key lessons learned just looking across all the pilots that we've been involved in. One that it really has sort of confirmed to us that communities do already know what they need at that sort of small micro grant level. The big stuff, perhaps, yes, they need more support and you need experts and do build a hospital or whatever, but there's so much small stuff that communities are motivated and can make decisions on, but they're just not being asked to. So that really supports Ostrom's principle, is that the communities are often the place we should start. And even small amounts can trigger bigger ripple effects. $50 to pay for the sports shoes or the petrol to get to the event or whatever can have huge, big effects. Simplicity is critical, and we spent about a year sort of iterating with the interface, just trying to play with button sizes and different voting technology, just trying to get something that people would understand reasonably easily. And of course, we often get asked about digital exclusion, and again, this is where the sort of the partner organisation is really important, because some people don't have smartphones, some people don't have data. So, in London, they actually had a manual form for those people, and they had iPads available, and they sort of supported those that way. So, but that problem is getting less. The importance of the local partners, as I mentioned, the charities, the stewards. Absolutely critical. Technology is just a small part of the solution. So the local knowledge, which is not us, is vital. And also getting the right community stewards. We've learned these stewards are really important. They're the ones that will sort of get the community engaged. They'll support them. They need to have the motivation, the time, the capability, and they're from the community. So really working hard to thinking about do they get paid to do that? Whatever sort of works for that community, and that's very, very sort of specific to the situation. Micro grants, unlock momentum. We see this work, as I mentioned. It works. I've repeated some of these. The importance of storytelling. So as we saw in the report that I did, which was the video of the barbecue, whatever, that's a mini story. That's very powerful, and with the community's permission, that can be published, that can go on social media, that can create this flywheel effect where we generate more interest from the local business who wants to fund it or a local funder. And trust built through transparency. So when if you look around the app, everything is transparent, and you can go to the events thing and you can see everything that's happened. You can see, we don't show names against who voted for what, that was by design, but everything else is transparent. So that transparency is very important. And the funder and the partner can see that as well. So that's really important, and that helps build trust. And participation does lead to transformation. When people experience even small wins, they start believing that they have agency. And I think there's actually hard research that says when people vote on hyperlocal things, they're more likely to vote in national elections as well. So there's some good evidence around that. So what we've done is to play with a mechanism over here. So that's what we did at the community end. And this is what we spent the bulk of the last 2 or 3 years exploring, that hyperlocal governance decision-making tool, which you've had to play with. And there's quite a more, we'll obviously just whiz through it in a few minutes, but there's quite a lot of thought and thinking around the stewards and the transparency around that system. Last year we got funding from Menzies Foundation Australia, Rod Drury, and the Ethereum Foundation in Switzerland to go to the next step and to think about next step towards this ecosystem play. How do we get the money to actually flow into that treasury in a seamless way? So I'll just talk through the architecture of how that works, because what we're trying to do is to build an economic system. So if you can think about, and this is where the blockchain comes in, because the blockchain gives us this mechanism to build economic systems, essentially. These treasury are basically blockchain bank accounts, but they're incorruptible, and we can program money flow, and it's transparent. Anybody can look at what the rules are. Nobody needs to trust us. So the way we've designed it, the community has a treasury, and that's the number at the top of the app that you've seen, whatever it is now, $900 currently in your app. The partner, somebody like Michelle, controls a community escrow account. So this is important because the money a big dollop of money doesn't go in the treasury. It actually goes in increments. So, and that keeps people aligned and motivated. So in one of our trials, it was 2,000 every 2 weeks goes into the community treasury. And the partner is there to just make sure things are going okay. If things are constitutionally aligned, if they're not, there's a conversation. Ultimately, they could decide not to put the next tranche of money in if things are really going off the rails. So that kind of protects the funder from too much going wrong. Because funders do get nervous when you tell them that people are going to decide how to spend their money. So we have this concept of the partner has their dashboard, which we'll have a look at in a minute, and they control the flow of money in, but they've got real-time information as to what's going on. But they also hold a partner escrow account, and this is because partners will be funding typically multiple communities, multiple community groups. So money that goes into their escrow, they can choose, and they'll have that knowledge to say, okay, well, this group needs a bit more. But once they put money into that community escrow, it can only go one way. It can only go into the community treasury. And the funder, they can do two things. They can fund the partner escrow or the community escrow directly, and that's a choice that they can make. Typically, they have a relationship with the partner, and they will typically put it into the partner escrow and let them make the call as to which way it should go. But again, they're using that they're accessing it from a simple dashboard, and they're getting real-time information about what's going on. So some key points about this architecture. It starts to look more like an economy, with money flowing in through this economy from bigger funders and flowing out as micro grants. So it's like a micro granting infrastructure. But the money, I talk about money, it's actually a token that represents a New Zealand dollar. So we call it the NZW, the Wellbeing Economy dollar, and that flows through the system from end to end. And the smart contracts, which I mentioned before, the ability to program that and make it transparent gives us a way to ensure that's very efficient, very transparent, and incorruptible. So we can ensure the money is going there. So let's have a quick look at the funder dashboards. This is the, I'm looking at the partner dashboard here. So this is something that Michelle might log into. And so Michelle is managing community. So Michelle is managing in a partner role. She's managing the Rakawa Changemakers, the community that you guys were playing with. This is her dashboard. She can manage members, so she can change a whole bunch of settings. But the most important bit here, this is how she can release money from her partner escrow into the community escrow. So if she decides to, she's got this extra money, she's going to put it into there. She's going to put $1,000, or let's do $100 for the moment. Oops. 100. Let's put 1,000. Okay, so this is a real life blockchain transaction. Anybody who knows about this technology, you can actually see this as independently verifiable. That's now happened. The money has moved, and what she can also do. Okay, now it's in the community escrow. I'm now going to actually put some money into the community treasury within their agreement. So she's going to put 500 more. Oops, 500 more, and that payment gets made. That flows from there, so that's gone up to $13.50. So your apps have now all been updated with that. So, and that will automatically adjust your voting, the technology, so it will change the thresholds because you've got more money, so it'll make it easier to get stuff across the line. So this is all happening in real time. But from a funder perspective, so we have a look at a funder dashboard. So they're getting real-time feedback so that the partner can post updates of what's going on. So as I mentioned, the funder can do two things. They can fund partners. So let's say, so the Lift project is this fictitious charity that is running the Rakawa youth group thing. We can also see the percentage, that there's also a percentage so that the partner can get a cut of the funds flowing through to pay their staff, but again, that's all transparent. So they can either fund directly the charity, put it into their escrow, or they can go directly into the Raukawa change makers and put money into there directly. So that's kind of the basic. Let's give you a bit more. Put that in there, so your app will go up directly with $200 more in there. Done. So your app should update. Okay, so some of the questions you've probably got, which I would have, is, oh, great, I can't spend my NZW in Bunnings or New World, which is a very good question. I'll just come back to that. So, but we have got this quite big problem in that we've got this friction between the world of cryptocurrencies and tokens and the real world. As I said, funders don't want to convert their precious money into internet funny money, and community members can't use it to buy groceries. So we've got this problem. So to overcome that, and we think that problem will eventually go away, and I think in the next few months you're going to see a lot of talk about stable coins. There's legislation just passed last week in the US. It's going to transform our banking system. So we think that's going to change, but it's not here yet. So for now, what we've done is to basically wrap this whole system into a black box and say, okay, this is our wellbeing economy controlled by our blockchain token, but actually a funder, as we introduce this concept of a fiscal host. So when a funder puts money in, so let's say a rich philanthropist say, I want to get involved in this, I want to put $10,000 in, they actually send the money to a fiscal host, a normal run-of-the-mill trusted charity with a board and a bank account and all that sort of stuff. When that money reaches their bank account, we mint 10,000 NZW tokens into our economy. Their dashboard gets updated and they can then push money through that system. Then what happens at the other end, when money flows out, so when a micro grant gets authorised, the fiscal host gets a trigger and that they pay the $150 out to the community. So it just abstracts the whole, so it abstracts all the complexity and all the risk, because this is just, as far as the accountants and the tax people and the IRD and everybody and the board members, this is just paying to a charity to support a micro-granting system. We're just using this blockchain bit to manage the flow of money. And this economic system can get more and more complex, and that's, you can introduce other stakeholders into that wellbeing economy. But this token can only be used for good. And there's no incentive to hold it, to keep it, because it's just sitting in the fiscal host's bank account and they're earning some interest on that. So everybody's incentivized to push it through. And there's an incentivized for the partner to push through money through, because they get their pre-agreed cut to pay their staff. So only once they push it into the community treasury. So again, we can build these rules to incentivize the flow of money into this economy that is funding micro grants for social good. So, okay, and everything is transparent. So, of course, with any network, with any economy, the value increases with scale. So the more participants in any network or any economy, the more incentive is to get other people in. And at scale, on the right-hand side, it starts to look like a sort of two-sided marketplace, because we have hundreds, thousands, millions of community groups doing good, and they might choose to publish their constitution, and we've got metadata around what they're doing, and they've got their treasuries, and then on the left-hand side, we've got a mechanism for anybody with financial capital to support social good. A couple of clicks, and they could stream money and support a theme. It could be environmental, it could be mental health, it could be whatever. We can easily build that in. But this goes into this infrastructure which is incorruptible and transparent to everybody. So at scale, it starts to look quite exciting. And also, these guys on the right are generating data, really interesting, valuable data. If a certain part of New Zealand, there's lots of proposals and ideas around, child youth decay or something, that money could be sold to government agencies, philanthropists, to help them with more strategic philanthropy, with the permission of the community, because they own that data. But even that, for us, isn't the end goal. A group of people managing a treasury is kind of like a cooperative. It's like a mini government. There's no reason we can do all this other stuff now. Once you've overcome the trust and engagement problem, they're actually using it and they believe it's good for them. We can start to build other tools that can support localism. So savings pools, volunteer coordination tools, micro, small business grants, community currencies. There's all these tools that we can build and build them into this technology. You can start to amplify the collective voice of these groups. And all these groups are consumers of real-world products. They're voters in normal elections. So we can start to help them amplify their voice as groups. But also, more excitingly, we can start to, this entity could start to own income-generating assets. And this is the kind of the next step. So this is kind of 3 steps to empowerment. 1 is get money from one funder. Step 2, get money from multiple funders, so you're not beholden to one funder. And almost the 3rd step is generate your own income, and then you reduce your reliance on funders altogether. So that's kind of the last bit that we want to move towards. So could this new economic system create much stronger connections between communities and funders? Could it start to change the power dynamics and the imbalance between the haves and the have-nots? And could it start to bring localism back to our world? Okay, just a couple more slides and then we're finished and we'll have some questions. So what next for us? So over the last 2 years, we've been really focusing on this bit, as I mentioned. More recently, we've released this bit as the dashboards that I just showed you. This is now ready to go. And what we want to do is to build a larger scale pilot. We want to get the sort of publicity that Froome did, and we want to do it in Wellington. We want to run a bigger pilot. We want 20 or 30 community groups, 3 to 5 partners, a bunch of funders. And we're really aiming for hundreds of microgrants being spat through the system, and therefore hundreds of stories. We want impact studies showing the positive results, a positive step change in efficiency, international, national press coverage, and we want to generate new funding. You think of this as catalytic philanthropy to get this going. And then we'll have the confidence to scale globally, scale nationally and scale globally. So we've got some figures in mind that we're trying to raise, and sort of 500K, 60% would go directly into these microgrants, 100% efficiency, and the rest would go to sort of build the supporting infrastructure for the partners, to train everybody, to get all the other bits and pieces working. So that's what we're aiming for. So if you want to get involved, please come and hit us up afterwards. I've got a questionnaire here, but probably we're running a bit late, so I won't get you to fill that out now, but we will hit you up later on. But yeah, I'd love to take some questions, if anybody's got any. Yep.
2 questions. How's the infrastructure going to be funded in this thing for the communities to use? And the second question is, are you thinking about disintermediating partners?
Okay, got a question. How's the infrastructure going to be funded? So our business model is essentially based on clipping the ticket of the money flowing through this economic system. But we want that to be really small, like a credit card transaction, and that can fund the support to keep the infrastructure supported and pay developers and build the system. So that model only kicks in when we get to a certain scale, because otherwise that bit is too much. So we're reliant on grant funding currently. So we've been funded by 3 government agencies and multiple organisations around the world to get to where we are. But yeah, so we're reliant on grant funding until we hit that scale, which we think we can do in about 18 months once we've got a certain sort of flow of money through the system. But we want that to be a very small fee, and it will all be transparent, and there's no profit sort of motivation. And your second question was?
Why do we need partners in this?
Oh yeah, why do we need partners? Well, partners provide that local knowledge. The Wellbeing Protocol is essentially a tech company. There's so many nuanced sort of skills needed for a hyperlocal group. So that partner, they're running, Region Melbourne and TSIP and all the partners we've worked with, they are doing the hard work of running workshops and dealing with digital exclusion and supporting people and just really making this work. We don't see that as our role. We're basically creating a product for the partners to use, and that's what we want to do well. So does that answer your question? Anybody else?
Mark, you might have answered, I had to go out. My experience 30 or 40 years working in the space is funding of the stewards, you call them. I call them the community development worker or whatever, is where it always falls down. So it's not saying communities are dumb. Communities have got the energy there, but they need that expertise and that person in that system. So when DIA's there are about 10 communities around New Zealand that are funded, but virtually all of them get 2 or 3 years funding, and as soon as the funding stops, the program falls over. So have you found a way around that, or are some of these wonderful funders in the room prepared to fund that side of things? Really?
Yeah, I mean, we're looking for sort of catalytic funding, both from the infrastructure, as I mentioned, but also to actually flow into these communities. But I guess the hope, the assumption is that if we can create this stream of good news stories, these little micro stories, and we can start getting them out into the real world, then that will help to encourage more non-traditional funders, just people with excess capital. And we know, the big, I guess the only positive thing about the wealth divide is there's more people with more money than they need. And we have to stop just sort of thinking the government's going to solve this. I think we need to sort of make it super easy, super transparent, and just create that greater connection for funders. And that's what we want to see. We want to see the funder, the sort of reasonably affluent, person in Kandala or couple, whatever, be able to participate and potentially turn up to events in Potorua or whatever. It's kind of, we just see it as an opportunity to create a much more efficient, connected system. But again, that's just the first step, because ultimately we want these groups to become more self-sufficient, have their own sources of income ultimately, but there's a few steps there. Yep.
Just to expand up, so they got the community development worker, so say like in this context, Michelle might be that community development worker, but in the Tāne Ora trial, I guess what we're trying to do is, like Michelle's not of the men's group, right? She's still outside the group, and even in the DA, there's still a hired person who goes and they might live in the community, but what we saw in the trial was that like the 4 men who were stewards, they're on the board of the iwi, they have governance experience, some more than others, but in each community, everyone, you bring it small enough and you make it easy enough to make that not too difficult. You can kind of abstract and lessen the role for someone like Michelle needing to go in. So
it's the model, but my experience that as soon as the person leaves, with all the intention of building the leadership in the community, it goes in.
Oh, for sure. So yes, and that's where back to the question about the partners, there'll always be that. And it'll be different in different communities, right? So there might be, I guess the key thing going to the green dollar and the reasons why mutual aid infrastructure, so time banks, those currencies kind of fall over is that they don't have any financial model that supports them.
They haven't got the venture capital, which is actually more of a social capital, and Roger would probably agree with me with what they possibly call compassionate capital, because they're there for the right reasons, even though they are the funders.
And so like the local developer will know what they're doing, they'll build a community currency, and then when they leave town, it'll fall over, right? So another addition to the open source blockchain infrastructure is that we can, and the whole kind of thing about scaling localism, is that localism doesn't scale, but technology does. So if you can build a low cost, or an infrastructure to start with that's supported open source, there's enough other forms of capital flowing through in the broader economic system. You can have an open source project that creates a revenue stream. So if funders find this useful, so the government starts pouring, I don't know, $1 million a year through it, and that infrastructure then has a revenue stream that will incentivize people to keep it running. So then at the different communities all around the world, that infrastructure doesn't cost a lot to keep it running, and it doesn't rely on that one developer sitting there. So there'll be thousands of developers around the world who might contribute because they have a few hours a week or something. So I guess that's the execution will be in whether they can do it, but that's the idea.
So sort of a segue to my question, which is how are you going to execute the first project, the pilot project, and find the proof of concept? So how would you encourage participation, which is one of the first steps?
Yeah.
When you get if say it worked in Wellington, what would be your steps further in the project?
Well, I think if we can get this, so we've done 15 odd trials at that sort of community governance end. So we've got lots of evidence there, but now we want to do this wider economic system where we start connecting people together and the dashboards and all that sort of stuff. That's what we haven't done yet. We want to do that in Wellington, I think, and we've got lots of interest from, social investment agency, iwi, who kind of saying, well, come back when you've got a bit more evidence, and it's kind of that chicken egg with a sort of tech social enterprise startup. So we need to get to that sort of next level of evidence, and that's what we think we can do here. And we want to commission impact studies and just go to the next level. Then I think it will be a lot easier to approach anywhere in the world or New Zealand and say, hey, look, come and look at what's happening here, just like Froome did. They've got international press. Look at what's happening, and why don't we try it in your area, and then it can grow from there.
I'm a little bit perhaps not catching the step between now and say you're funded, and then what?
For this Wellington pilot? Yes, so we need to create this ecosystem of funders, partners, and communities. Now,
so the steps would be to collect people how?
Well, we need to. We already got a bunch of potential partners. These are local charities in Wellington who are potentially keen to jump on, but they're snowed under, cash strapped, but are keen in principle to sort of jump in. So we know that they exist. We now need to sort of get some funders together to say, look, we're going to put in a bit each, and we've now got the capital to do this. The partners have got the communities. That's what they do. That they will work with us and the funders to identify perhaps 3 or 4 or 5 communities each, and then we start to connect it all together, and we start training people up. And again, the nice thing is we can start very small. We could try it with one partner, one funder, 15 people in a community group, and start watch the money flowing in, and then go again, then 2 communities, 3 communities, add another partner in. We can sort of grow it organically rather than sort of.
It could be 5,000, 500,000 that could come down if it's very small.
Yeah. I mean, we would prefer to sort of do it, start going properly. So we've got this proper funding. We can do this properly. Yeah, but the alternative is to sort of scale back the funding and go, let's start smaller. But yeah, that's another option.
So you're engaging with some of the existing ones like Community Networks, Aotearoa, Inspiring Communities and people like that. They've been doing this for years, but they haven't had the funding source.
Yes, I think we've talked to those, but it's fairly recently that we've had this sort of version 2 of the product, so we're just sort of working through, and that's part of what these events are. We're running events here in Auckland, and just FYI, if anybody of anybody in Auckland, we've got a few more spaces there left on Wednesday. But yes, that's part of what these events are all about, is just sharing what we've done, some of the evidence, and saying, okay, help us, get to that next step. Yep.
Oh, me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to suggest is, do you know about the Digital Public Goods Alliance by the UN?
Not much.
So what they're doing is they've actually implemented a standard for digital public goods or open source software. Yeah. And once you get approval for that, it's much easier to get the big funders in.
The big US funders, or
in the UN, it's for the UN.
Okay.
UN funders.
Right. Okay.
And actually, so it's a little bit in this realm. I could see the EU being more interested.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
When you talk about training people, are you talking about a kind of outreach program?
Well, we're talking about workshops. We're talking about.
So how do you train a community to use these tools?
So that's. I mean, we've done it in different ways. Typically, more often than not, we work with the partner and we train them up, and then we work with them to come up with the best strategy to train the community groups. But they take a lead on that. We start to step back because we haven't got that local knowledge that they have, and how you train, how you educate the community, how do you get them motivated is something that's very local by definition. And so we don't want to, and the cultural aspect is different in every community. So, yeah.
Just one other thing. Sorry, Roger and I are from the same ilk, community development and stuff.
Yeah.
You've got the partner, so the partner is going to come along to the community, engage with the thing, rather than be the rider on the white horse that comes in and says, hey, we've got this idea, do you want to work with it? Community-led development, so there's the funder coming along, not the funder, but the partner going to come alongside and say, hey, we want you to help you with the development, because we have some of these skills and stuff that you may not have at the moment, but you can develop.
You want
so
that
at the
one?
moment, in the Tāne Ora group that I work with, Rangi, who you saw earlier, we've been texting through this, apologies Mark, because he's got some new tāne he wants to train. So I kind of come in and help him out, release him from that volunteer stuff. He does all the motivation, he finds the people who can, but in that community-led space, I'm very much led by Rangi. They put all their ideas in, they determine things, and over time they're getting some of the younger tāne involved, so they're picking up the tech and taking that on. So it's a slower process.
Yeah, I know who they are.
Yeah, that's
just
right.
down the road.
Yeah.
From the
And I know that when Ben and Mark came in, the tāne were talking in a whole different English language than they were. I think one of you learnt about HP from the guys, so that was high images, that sort of thing. So there's like this whole other cultural currency that you need, and so having those people in between is where the partner sits, but not to take over, not to take the funding, but to support even that step to vote, to say, I can't do this for you, what do you think? Yes, community-led, very much inspiring communities, kind of kaupapa at its heart.
And in the app we have various levels of, you can have a view-only view where you can see what's going on but you can't vote, and we've got sort of observer roles, and so we've built that in, and there's dashboards and stuff. So we're quite careful around who can do what, but ultimately we wanted to create that transparency.
Just one point to the community. What we tried to do to start with the hardest problem in the community is to get a representative voice, which is the cornerstone of the community, right? So at the moment, funders typically are in paid roles and they do their job and they buy their food and all the rest. So I guess what we've tried to do, focus on, is make it as easy as possible for the person who finds it the hardest to engage to get involved. So we've been focusing on that energy there, because everyone else behind the scenes gets paid to do the job, to kind of make up the ground in between. And at the moment, a huge amount of money goes into OPEX from $1 out. Who knows? That's upwards of 60% might even go into that kind of cost. So I guess that money already exists, and people already get paid to do the job. So we really want the person who knows how to use Facebook can use this app if they sign up. They can log in, they only need to know 2 screens, I put the thumbs on, sweet. And then over time they might engage with everyone else can kind of build in behind that, is where we're trying to make the effective change, if that makes sense.
My name's Fiona Purchase. Thank you, Mark. I'd just like to say, mine's more of a comment than a question. I'd just like to congratulate your team. I think it's an amazing tool. I've been in the not-for-profit sector all my life. Started as a teenager in youth development, have worked in health, in maternity care, in the not-for-profit space, run a national organisation with, like 1,200 families and 500 volunteers. I've run a very large NGO, and I just think this is amazing technology, and I just want everyone to congratulate your team. I think it's really stunning. I can absolutely see so many places where this could be applied, and it takes a lot to get your head round, and I think the blockchain stuff is really hard to understand for those of us who aren't in that space in techie. It feels a bit scary because it's really new, but I've done some reading on it previously, so I do know where you're coming from. I just think it's potentially stunning, But yeah, there's a lot of communication and taking people along the journey that will be required. So congratulations up to you guys.
Can I add to that, Fiona?
Yeah.
Because I also thought during this presentation that it was really well presented, and there was breakouts, and I've been to a lot of, you know, talks, and this is really well done. So that also is.
Thank you. Can we interview you afterwards?
Can I ask another question? So I'm in blockchain, quote unquote. Mark and I met at his first conference, and I love what he's doing, and even I'm confused. So just as a one bit of feedback, and I've written it in my feedback comment thing. It's like, can you tell it as just like it's social software with the points, and you don't need to tell the blockchain stuff? Because who's the blockchain stuff for? It feels like it's the
Yeah, no, and this has been an ongoing debate between me and Benjamin and many other people. Is do I even mention blockchain? To a lot of people, it's just it's the plumbing. I don't care about technology. That there is a subset of group who kind of ask, well, why now, and how come you can do it and other people can't? So that's why I kind of do like to include a couple of slides and just to make the point that this is the reason we're able to do this in a way that could literally scale to global level is because we've got this bigger ambition. We're not just doing it for Tanora, we're doing it for the rest of the world. So and to kind of disrupt the sort of the capitalist system in a way ultimately. So yeah, but it is, for some audiences, I have been told off for just we don't care about blockchain, but other people do kind of go, oh, I now get why you guys are able to do this and other people aren't. But good feedback. Yep. Okay, I think we'll wrap up now. So thank you very much for coming and taking your time out. I know it's a sort of slightly mind-bending topic, and I know we've covered a lot. I've covered a lot. As I say, we are starting something where we need funding, we need support, we need help, expertise. We're more of a movement than a company. So if you want to get involved at any level, please drop us a line. We have got a little feedback form here, or you can just email us. We'll also fire out the video afterwards and do forward it on to other people who you think might be interested. And we're up in Auckland, as I mentioned, on Wednesday. So we've got sort of 50, 60 people signed up for that, including some reasonably big names. So do help us sort of grow this, because I think this is an opportunity for Wellington, it's an opportunity for New Zealand, and I'm excited to see where it goes. So what do I need to wrap up with? So there's some drinks and food up there at the end. We'd love to talk to you and for you to meet a few more of each other afterwards. So do hang around for a chat, and if anybody want to go hardcore on a Monday night and go down to the pub afterwards, we might do that. Anything else to wrap up, Frida? Okay, so we are recording this, and we've done a few interviews. If you'd rather not be on film, please let us know either now or email us, and we'll just make sure you don't appear in any videography stuff.